When it comes to technology, are you fed up with hype and buzzwords? If you're looking for a tech podcast where you can learn and be inspired by real-world examples of how technology is transforming businesses, reshaping entire industries, and even our world, you've come to the right place. Now, as someone that writes about technology and records a daily tech podcast, it can be frustrating seeing examples of technology for technology's sake or horror stories around tech. But today I want to remedy that by talking about the power of sound, neuroscience of sound, and using AI to harness the power of sound and not to replace creativity and artists, but marrying tech, art and science to make people feel better. And as I've just said that out loud, it's the epitome of what this podcast is all about, technology working best when it brings people together. So, for example, if you've heard James Blake's album version of Wind Down, that was actually done in collaboration with sound and wellness company Endel. And it was inspired by the science and sound of sleep. And Wind Down was a prelude to bedtime, helping listeners shift gradually from the activity of the day to the calm of the night. And it uses the same AI technology and sounds found in adaptive experiences available in other Endel apps. And this got me thinking, because it's no secret that more and more people are now turning towards ambient music as an effective tool to help them relax, focus, or even on their movement and sleep. And when I'm writing articles, I will often have maybe the Bicep album on, or video game music or something to keep me focused. Well, I'm not sat there actually singing lyrics instead of writing words myself. So today I've invited Oleg Stavitsky, co-founder of Endel, to explore this topic in more detail. So buckle up and hold on tight, because no matter where you're located in the world right now, I'm going to beam your ears all the way to Berlin so you can sit down and enjoy a great conversation with Oleg from Endel. So a massive warm welcome to the show. Can you tell the listeners a little about who you are and what you do?
So my name is Oleg Stavitsky. I am the CEO and one of the 6 co-founders at Endel. So for the past 4 years, I am responsible for building the strategy and running this company.
Fantastic. And what I'd love to do, because it's such a big company, I'd love to take you back in time for a moment. So can you remember where your passion for tech came from and what would ultimately put you on this path you're on today?
I vividly remember that. So it was iPad 1 came out. I was that time. And my first daughter was born. So I have 2 daughters, and the first one was just born. So I think she was around 1. And I remember buying the first iPad, and the first app that I downloaded was Brian Eno's Bloom. It was this beautiful, mesmerizing app where you could, just tap on the screen and it would generate this beautiful ambient soundscape. So I gave the iPad to my daughter, and, I vividly remember she was sitting on the floor and just tapping away on this iPad without really thinking what she was doing. She was just touching the screen. Again, she was just 1. And this beautiful ambient music was being generated on the fly, on the spot, as she was just touching the screen. And I was like, first of all, this is beautiful and mesmerizing. And second of all, I want to build experience like this. And that kind of set me on the path. Yeah, and here I am.
Wow, what a great story. And of course, it was that path that would eventually lead you to Endel. So can you tell me more about the story behind the company and the kind of problems that you set out to solve with your technology there?
Well, when people ask me what is Endel, I always say this is a technology that was built to help you focus, relax, and sleep with the power of sound. So the way we do that is we have built this technology that generates personalized, adaptive, functional soundscapes. And they adapt to things like, time of day, weather, your heart rate, your movement, your calendar. So we plug all of this data into our algorithm, and it generates a soundscape on the spot. And it's not just some soundscape. It's a functional soundscape that is designed to help you achieve what I call a certain cognitive state. meaning focus, relax, sleep, or meditate, or concentrate.
Love that. And I always say on this podcast that technology works best when it brings people together. So the reason I invited you on the podcast today was to talk a little about how you're marrying tech, art and science to ultimately help people feel better. But can you expand on exactly how you're doing just that?
Well, I'm doing that just by, working with people that I work with. And, as I mentioned, Endel has 6 co-founders, which is quite unusual. Normally you have 1, 2, maybe 3 co-founders max. We're 6 people. And this is a very, very diverse team. I'm talking about, contemporary artists. So our art director is a contemporary artist, or our chief music officer is a neoclassical composer. So, we have artists, designers, engineers, obviously, on my team. So they have very, very different people that come from kind of different walks of life with very, very different backgrounds. And so I think this is what makes Endel, right? Like, so we have people who are not thinking about data and matrix at all. They are thinking about art and, the magic of art, let's put it that way. And I have people who are thinking about kind of the cultural sensibilities of certain soundscape. And then, of course, I have, engineers and data people and things like that. So I think it's because these people, they have almost, different perspectives on what we're doing, very different perspectives. And because that kind of makes Endel, that makes it so distinct, I would say, right? Like that's because we are approaching this task of helping people focus, relax, and sleep from very, very, very different perspectives. And often we don't agree with each other. But I think true magic happens when these things kind of merge, they combine, and there is art, technology, and science. And yeah, you can only do that by bringing people from this kind of very, very different spheres of life to work on something together.
And I think that more and more people are turning towards ambient music as an effective tool to help things like relaxation, focus, movement and sleep, etc. And I'll be honest with you, if I'm writing an article, I'll either have instrumental songs, video game soundtracks, or even the sound of the ocean and waves just to keep me focused. Is this something you're seeing more and more of too?
Of course. I mean, Endel was frankly envisioned by observing this category grow. I mean, first of all, I am a huge ambient music nerd, you can say. I'm a huge Brian Eno fan, obviously. I just love ambient music. And I think this concept of music kind of being not at the forefront of your attention, but rather kind of blending with the background and just tinting the environment, I think it's a very, very beautiful concept. So Endel was, as I mentioned, envisioned by observing, this functional music space grow. And when I say functional music, I mean all of the meditation, relaxation, sleep, concentration playlists on all of the streaming services grow. So we've looked at this data. We obviously we realized that we ourselves are very, very passionate about this, and we figured, how about we take these ideas? How about we take Brian Eno's ideas of generative music and kind of infuse them with modern technology and take them to the next level? And yeah, here we are talking to you about this.
Absolutely love that. I'm a big fan of Brian Eno as well, and ambient music and music for airports, I think it was, and also some of the great work. He did a great album with John Cale and the track "Spinning Away." Just amazing. So talented, isn't he?
I love that song. And I mean, talented, I think when you talk about Brian Eno, it doesn't even, begin to describe him. I think he's wildly kind of inventive. He's almost like a philosopher, like a music philosopher, if you will. And yeah, I'm a huge fan of everything that he's doing.
And another reason I wanted to invite you on the podcast today was after reading about your collaboration with James Blake. Can you expand on that too?
Sure. And it's not just James Blake, right? Like we've worked with, Grimes and Plastic Man and Miguel, and James is the last artist in this ongoing artist collaboration series that we have going for Endel. So we've been doing this for quite a while, and he was, I mean, obviously impressed with what we have done so far. And he was, as you probably know, well, like he's worked with Brian, and he considers him to be his music mentor. So it was he immediately grasped, and he immediately got what we're trying to do here. So he was very excited to, take his music in that direction.
And as you said, you've worked with so many different artists. But if we just take this one example, I read that it uses AI technology and sounds found in the adaptive experience available exclusively in the Endel apps. So can you just expand on the work you did with him and how you brought that whole concept to life?
So the way all of our artist collaborations work is basically all of the music artists that we invite, they never, record just a music composition. They never submit a song or a soundscape or anything like that. What they do is they, create a sound pack, just individual notes, chords, pads, according to our scientific guidelines that we provide them with. And so basically what happened with James is he created a sound pack. And we fed that sound pack into our algorithm, and then the algorithm kind of did the job, right? Like, so it's scary to certain types of music artists. For example, if you talk about like Plastic Man, Rich, his music is very, very architectural and precise, and every single sound is precisely where he wants them to be. So for him, for example, it was very uncomfortable, taking this hands-off approach and just, leaving something unfinished and just, letting the machine do the job. And of course, all of them, we have some, feedback loops, so the artist listens to the end result, and then they maybe say, oh, actually, I want to remove some of the stems or like add some new sounds. But ultimately, it's, they provide the building blocks, and the algorithm uses the building blocks to generate kind of adaptive, personalized, functional soundscape version of their work.
And apologies for getting quite excited about this, but it prompts a kind of a bigger question, and that is, has AI technology ushered in a new era of ambient music that can more effectively serve specific wellness and mental health purposes? Because zooming out and looking at the bigger purposes here, or the bigger picture, there's so many possibilities and opportunities, isn't there?
Yes, I mean, there's a lot of applications. There's obviously a ton of opportunities, but you're absolutely right when you're saying, should AI be used to solve a specific, need or pain or purpose, serve a specific purpose? I think it does, and I think it should. And I think that's exactly what we're doing with Endel, meaning, we're not just using AI for AI's sake. Like, I'm not really a big fan of, just AI music done to show people, oh, look, this machine can now create, a composition. Well, that's not that interesting to me. Yeah. But I think where AI really comes into play is when you are trying to solve a specific task, which in our case is, helping you to get to a certain cognitive state. And this is where this idea of this machine listening to constantly listening to your biometric inputs and adapting to the changes in those inputs. This is where AI comes into play. And this is what we're doing.
And for yourself, that's working right in the heart of this space. What excites you about that growing intersection of science, sound, and wellness, and the role that Endel will play in that future? What excites you most about that?
I mean, what excites me about this is, this concept of ambient music, right? Like, and this genre of ambient music, rather, it was there for quite some time, right? Like, I mean, Brian recorded music for airports when was that? Like, we're talking the 70s of like, right? So it's been this niche kind of genre of music that was not kind of widely recognized. But what's happening right now, I think a very, very beautiful, almost like a high art concept that is turning into a massive business. That this is what's happening, right? Like, because you have this technology that generates this beautiful, adaptive, kind of ever-changing, always morphing soundscapes that surround you. And sometimes, you can barely hear them. Sometimes they're like front and center. They shield you from the rest of the world, and they help you achieve a certain cognitive state. I think this is a very, very artistic concept. And at the same time, it's a very, it's a very, very practical thing at the same time. So like, how many times in our life can we say that, it's an art concept that serves a very, very practical purpose, and at the same time introduces millions of people to this genre that used to be very, very niche. I don't think we have a lot of opportunities in our lives to witness something like this. And I think this is what we're witnessing now. So I'm just personally very, very passionate and excited about, what's happening with Endel.
Well, I'd love to stay in touch with you and see where this journey leads. But before I let you go, I'm going to ask you if there's a book that you could possibly leave everyone listening that we can add to our Amazon wish list that's maybe inspired you or important to you that you'd recommend and leave as a bit of a parting gift to everyone listening. What book would you leave everyone with?
It's interesting. I would leave everyone with The Magus by Joan Fowles. This is my favorite fiction book. Right, like it's not a nonfiction book. It's not a business book. It's not a book about technology at all. In fact, it's almost like this. I don't know, like a fable, I guess. Like and the same, it's a philosophical text for sure. But at the same time, it's just a very, very mesmerizing story. So it works on so many levels, and I would say I see a lot of parallels between that book and what we're doing with Endel, in the sense that, you can just take it at face value and just enjoy the very, very, interesting story that is just, is just mesmerizing. It's very, very interesting to follow, but it works on so many levels. And the more you come back to it, the more it keeps on giving. Like I've read that book, I don't know, maybe 5 times by now. And it's one of my favorite books, if not the favorite book. So I highly, encourage everyone to go and read and listen to it.
Awesome. Well, I'll add that book to our Amazon wish list so people can check that out. And you did mention early on in our podcast that you've collaborated with many, many different artists. And for anyone wanting to check out some of those songs, if I was to add one of those songs of someone you've collaborated with to our Spotify playlist, which would you choose? And I'll add that there as well.
I would either choose, the very, very first soundscape from the James Blake album, the Wind Down album that we did with James, or again, phase 1 from this album that just came out that we did in collaboration with another ambient music legend, Laraji. So one of those, I'm absolutely kind of hypnotized by both of those albums. I love them very much. So yeah, I think one of those songs.
I'm feeling generous. I'm going to put both of those on our Spotify playlist for people to check out. But before I let you go, for anyone listening, just want to find out more information about anything we talked about today, or even contact your team, what's the best starting point for everything?
So you go to Endel, that's ENDEL.io. And I mean, obviously there's multiple ways to do that, but there's also a section about our community. And we have a Discord server that currently, is home to a community of 2,000 people where, people who love functional music, love ambient music, just enjoy what we're doing. They get in touch with us. I'm there on that Discord server. Like you can just DM me really and just talk to me. I'm there quite often. So yeah, go to our website and from there, join our Discord group. That's the best way to see and to follow our journey.
Well, as I said at the very beginning, I think I always say at the end of every episode that technology works best when it brings people together, and how you're marrying tech, art and science to ultimately help people feel better is incredibly inspiring on its own. And I almost feel we could have a spin-off episode just talking about the works of Brian Eno, but more than anything, just thank you for joining me today.
Thank you very much.
So if I was to go back to the Wind Down album example we were talking about there, one of the things that stood out is it's the first ambient music album constructed via AI to be released by a universal label. And I just love how the artistry blends seamlessly with Endel's patented AI technology. And it really does prompt a bigger question, doesn't it? Has AI technology ushered in a new era of ambient music that could more effectively serve specific wellness and mental health purposes? I know you have unique experiences and insights, and I want you to be part of this conversation. And there are many ways that you can contact me. Simply email me at techblogwriter@outlook.com. If you would like to slide into my DMs and send me an audio message on LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram, or TikTok, you can find me at Neil C. Hughes. I always like to finish every episode by saying technology works best when it brings people together. And the fact that you tune in every single day further proves that point. So I hope you'll join me again tomorrow. But a big thank you for listening as always. And until next time, don't be a stranger.